Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 462, being recorded on August 9th, 2017. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Josh Walrus.
Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 462, being recorded on August the 9th, 2017. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Josh Walrus.
I'm Ken Addison.
I'm Sebastian Peak.
It was much better this time around.
I'm not sure it was.
Welcome to the show, everybody. We talk about computer hardware and whatnot here. This is a very special episode of the podcast. I want to get this out of the way now. This is going to be a bifurcated podcast.
I don't think that's the right word. We're not splitting it in two.
Well,
Is that even a real
we did.
word?
We recorded part one, and now we're recording part two.
In half.
Just because we're, look it up. Make sure I'm right. So the Threadripper processor performance NDA, for us at least, is tomorrow morning, Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time. So we can't talk about the Threadripper processor here today on this podcast.
Correct.
With you guys live, right? But if you're watching this the next day, if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, you're watching this or you're listening to it on your favorite Zune podcast player, we'll be able to talk about Threadripper. So what we did was we recorded our Threadripper discussion earlier off live. Sorry, everybody who's live. And we will cut that into the discussion as we go. So when you feel that continuity shift where I no longer have beard and Ken had a beard on, right? All these changes are going to occur suddenly, and that's because we recorded that session a little bit early. So
just like
keep in mind for that.
The things you find in the back of the Highlights magazine where you have to find the differences. You should do that in the YouTube comments for all of the continuity errors.
Right. Yes. Correct.
Do not draw.
Yeah, and in the one continuity area, I've got a shake weight, and I'm using it, so it's going to be really obvious.
Sure. So we do record the show live, and most of the time we have all the content on it at PCPer.com/live, Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. That's if you're watching us live now, that's where you're at probably. If you need a reminder, you want to be notified when we're doing these live streams, if you go to PCPer.com/subscribe, you get this page here, looks like this page. It is actually this page. Give us your name and your email address, and we send you notifications when we're going to do live streams. Most of the time it's for these podcasts, but sometimes it's for other events. Sometimes we host live streams with AMD software groups, and we give away RX 580 video cards. Maybe that happened today. Maybe that happened literally like 5 hours ago or 6 hours ago or something like that.
I thought that was today still.
Yeah, I know. So if you had been signed up for that mailing list, you would have known about that event. So make sure you do that. And then, of course, we have our Patreon campaign going at patreon.com/PCPer. This is where you have the opportunity, if you wish to contribute to us on a monthly basis. It's a recurring monthly payment. It could be $1, $3, $5, $10, $20, whatever you want it to be. We appreciate each and every one of you that becomes a patron, that stays a patron, that increases patronage. All that type of stuff is super awesome, and it's definitely a big, big help for us here. As is always the case on the podcast, I will call out any new patron members and or anybody who increases their patronage during the live stream, and I will thank them. And now I will do so twice. Shrouded Out Loud just pledged $5. So thank you very much to Shrouded Out Loud. I appreciate that. That's awesome.
There's a joke somewhere in there. I just can't find it.
I don't know what it is. And then Ryzen Shrout just pledged $4.99. RYZEN, Ryzen, as in the processor Shrout. I didn't have a kid named that I know of. But there you go.
Will you name your next child Ryzen?
No.
Why are you such an Intel fanboy?
Because it's definitely going to be Coffee Lake Shrout. Sorry, it's already been determined. So thank you to Shrouded Out Loud and Ryzen Shrout, distant family members, for their contributions to our Patreon campaign. I don't know why that link didn't work, but I will mention it anyway. We have so we've been doing more videos, guys. If you go to our YouTube channel, which is very simply youtube.com/PCPer, as I attempt to type that in.
Yeah, we got one of those fancy vanity URLs
before they got rid of them. Yeah. So if you go there, you can see one that we are actively streaming live.
Oh God, don't do Streamception.
That's good. And also we have all these other videos that have been going up. One, we did a PC perspective plays of Dark Forces, the 1995 first-person shooter that I think was surprisingly good and surprisingly fun. And also I'm doing mailbags, and apparently I make those faces while I'm doing the mailbags.
Yeah, we didn't want to tell you about it, but that just
somebody else makes the
lot.
thumbnail, so whatever. It's not my problem. Not my problem.
That's a very YouTube face, Ryan. Good job.
Yeah, I don't have any justification for it, to be perfectly honest with you. But if you're missing out on these things, stop missing out on these things and watch them. You know, Ken and I, we played Dark Forces. We played the original 1995 version, then we played this Dark XL version, which is like a new engine,
like a third-party engine that someone wrote that's compatible with a couple of games actually.
And
how come you never play with me? That's what I want to know.
Well,
I'm just sitting here all by my lonesome
if
in
you look at
Wyoming,
this video, changing the subject nonchalantly,
playing with myself.
there are 4 copies of Dark Forces sitting on the desk in front of us, like actual boxed copies with the discs in them and everything.
One of them had a sealed disc inside of them.
Yeah,
box
look at
wasn't
that.
sealed.
Look how
That's weird.
amazingly awful that is. Oh my, that is
Sprites rock.
Oh man, and then there's Mon Mothma. Okay, and then look at that visual tearing. This is the newer version, right? Yeah, it's funny because like some of the stuff is very sharp and crisp in the new engine, and then you come up to those textures and stuff, and they're like the doors and stuff. It's like no, that's still awful, still real bad. It's like that right there.
It's like 256 by 256 textures.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun
not
though.
Lower.
A lot of fun, worth checking out. You know, for if you want to hang out with us for an hour, 15 minutes. We talk about random crap as we do it as well, so that's always fun. And then today, I already mentioned it real quick, but if you missed it, you can check out the replay. We did a Radeon Software Group live stream where they came in, they talked about their newest software releases, talked a little bit about what they were planning for the future. They've got another big December release coming up. We gave away some RX 580s. Sorry, they've already been given away, so you can't win them if you watch the replay. That's disappointing, I bet. But it's interesting to talk to these guys, talk to the engineers, the marketing teams, the product managers about what their plans are, what their ideas were, why they did certain things they did. They had a pretty compelling case about their system where you could vote for which features you like.
Yeah, I honestly didn't know that existed until today.
Yeah.
That's a really cool thing.
And so they talk about, hey, like the 2 features that got added in this driver were the number 1 and the number 2 on that list.
Makes sense.
Over the last several months. So good on them for doing that. Good on them for coming out and stopping by, updating us, keeping everybody abreast of what is going on. Hey, look, I'm wearing that same shirt right now. Shirtception. If I pulled this shirt off and I had another identical shirt on underneath it, that would be
put
worrisome.
a note in the comment of every video that Ryan wears this shirt in the next day. We'll say
there'll be a lot of them. And then our final note at the top of the list is August 26th. We will be hosting our 16th virtual LAN party. The Fragging Frogs group, which is our gaming group in our forums, host these. And usually Jeremy talks these up, but he is MIA with us today. But Lenny helps organize these in the chat. These go from 10 a.m. until late into the a.m. that night. They play a bunch of games. You get on TeamSpeak servers. I don't know if they have a Discord or anything set up. I'll have to look and see if they want to set something up. So they play a lot of different games. You just basically have a lot of fun. It's a LAN party, but virtualized, so that you don't have to be in the same room with Josh, which I think
just ideal.
Everybody appreciates that a little bit, And
I mean,
like
you've seen my office.
Yeah,
parts of it.
Let's keep it at that.
Part of it.
Let's keep it at that. All right, so now we're going to get into the meaty topics of the week, and this is the point where people who are on the live stream will be disappointed as we skip right past our discussing AMD Threadripper review.
Yeah,
and move on to the next Threadripper.
Hold on, I have to get into position for the chair flip I do in the beginning. So.
Okay,
we'll
ready?
cut here.
Let's talk about Threadripper. We can talk about the reviews. We can talk about performance, not just like a little bit from Alienware and a little bit from AMD and a little bit from other videos and stuff that come out. We can actually talk about the full review. Obviously, we mentioned this. We're recording this before the review goes up, hence why this giant unpublished watermark across all of the stories that we'll be showing you in the video version. Don't worry. As you hear this, it is actually published and live. So
if you read very closely when we cut to the screen, you can see all of the typos that we have to
That's
fix.
right. Yeah,
All the grammatical mistakes.
all the edits that haven't been fixed yet are still going to be in there. So don't pay any attention to those. So let's talk about Threadripper for a little bit. We know all about the specs. We know about what the expectations are for it. I kind of opened up my review by discussing who this processor should be for. And I think to kind of unbury the lead a little bit, this is not a processor for enthusiast gamers that want the best possible gaming performance.
Yeah.
This is a processor for people who are content creators, who are have some specific workload, whether it be rendering or ray tracing or software development or analytics or something like that, that uses highly threaded applications that can then wants to do that very fast and then also wants to do other things like game, right? So I think I put in the story like this is content creation first, gaming second. If you're doing gaming first, content creation second, you may make a different decision on your processor choice. We've already talked about installation methods for this stuff. It's look at that. It is a massive processor. It actually doesn't even really put it to scale.
Yeah, you can't tell in there.
How much does it weigh?
Actually, Alex weighed this at one point when we first got them in. Do you happen to remember? It was
a little bit over a third pound.
Yeah. It's
like
heavy.
a hamburger patty.
Yeah.
Gonna go to Wendy's and order me a Threadripper. So it's an impressive part. Like I said, we've walked through the specs. We know 16 core, 12 core, up to 4 gigahertz, $999 price tag, $799 price tag. The important stuff here is a couple of things. One is, as we'll talk about on this next page, when we look at the architecture of this, there's 4 physical pieces of silicon under the heat spreader, 2 of which are active dies and 2 of which are dead, transistorless. What are you doing over there? Transistorless.
I'm struggling with
dies,
packaging.
just for stability's sake of the heat spreader. Now, when you start to cross these physical die, you have a new complication of memory interface. More or less, Threadripper acts like a 2-socket system in a single socket. In many ways, actually. The way that the dies are distributed, the interface between them, the latency between them, all is very similar to what we see with multi-socket, kind of like Intel Xeon servers and workstations. This means that AMD, in their desire and will to create a very customizable part, something that works really well for highly threaded apps like ray tracing and rendering, but they also want to make it as good as they possibly can for gaming, for those people that want to use it for gaming. They've integrated the ability to switch between 2 different memory modes, local and distributed, or as the rest of the world would call them, NUMA and UMA, kind of, whatever. We don't get into the semantics necessarily of it. The idea is you can change the memory mode of the platform to better suit the workloads you're using. So stuff that is super sensitive to memory latency will do better in the local mode, where it tries to keep data and accesses to that data and threads that access that data on one NUMA node, one block of processors, which in this case is going to be one die.
So you're saying maximize locality of data.
Correct.
Yes.
Through hence the operating system and through creating, Windows, when you're in this mode, Windows sees 2 NUMA nodes that it can address, right? The for applications that want more memory bandwidth or they want a wider interface for memory, the distributed /UMA mode is in play, where memory access is spread across all 4 memory channels instead of kind of trying to focus on 2 of those memory channels. And any workloads that don't require, significant cross-thread communication or memory access can perform better in that light. Now, they've enabled you to access these options through their Ryzen Master software, which is their overclocking / monitoring tool, which they released with Ryzen 7, 3, and 5, or 7, 5, and 3, I guess I should say. But I never really used it, right? I am very used to overclocking in the BIOS and going into the settings and those types of things.
I think just using it with Threadripper versus using it with Ryzen 7 when it came out, the application has gotten a lot more mature.
Is it? Okay.
To work a whole lot better now than it did.
Gotcha.
Fast.
Gotcha.
Which is nice.
What they've done is as I click through here and close my restart warning message, they've added in a couple of settings. So under additional control, which is very descriptive, you can turn on SMT or turn it off there. You have memory access mode, distributed or local, that we've talked about. So you can swap that switch, but you do have to reboot between switches between changing that mode, right? And then they also have legacy compatibility mode, which we'll talk about as well. So you can access these from the software, in addition to some of the other overclocking stuff that we've seen in the past. But you still have to reboot to do it. So which begs the question, right? Which mode is better? Which mode should you be running in? In our testing, we tested our entire suite of benchmarks on the 1950X in UMA and NUMA at 2400 megahertz memory and 3200 megahertz memory in both of those modes, and basically came to the conclusion that with only a couple of exceptions, UMA was the best option. Gaming being one of those exceptions, but even then the differences were minimal. We're kind of famous for these thread-to-thread ping times between cores now. And if you'll notice, this is one of the Threadripper 1950X. It's getting more complex. It looks a little bit more like a tree from Game of Thrones than it used to, as opposed to something a little bit easier to read. And there's 32 different lines here, so I don't expect anybody to understand every line and what it means, what the intricacies are.
The general pattern?
The general pattern is what you care about, right? These bottom points are the memory access time for threads that share physical cores. You know, this top line, this about at around 45 nanoseconds, is for threads that share the same CCX, right? The same core complex. This line up here is for threads that share the same physical die, but do not share the same CCX, so cross CCX. And that's basically, if you look at a Ryzen 7 processor, you're looking at this segment right here that I'm kind of circling for people who are watching the video version. And then once you start to cross the physical die, you get this jump up here to around the 250 nanosecond mark.
Oh, so the glue latency.
The glue latency, yeah. Correct, right. As Intel would say it, this is what the glue does, is it crosses there. Now, this is at 2400 where, we're up to 250 nanosecond latency. If you run that memory at 3200, you actually drop it down to close to, by 20% or so, down to 200 nanoseconds. So there is a significant delta there. But there is also a significant addition of latency because of this non-single monolithic die implementation of stuff, right? So worth noting. And also worth noting, like, this is an Intel Xeon E5 2680, which is Ivy Bridge E, and this is 2 sockets. So there's differences here, but the similarity of this graph and this graph is this huge jump up, right? Where they're kind of averaging somewhere in the 240 nanosecond range across that, but that is for these cores and threads to access memory on this side. So it is a very similar to a multi-socket system when it comes to actual latency metrics as well.
And a multi-socket system like that can only run in NUMA mode. There's no option for unified memory. This is sort of a new thing that we're seeing from AMD with its launches.
Yeah.
The idea of having essentially 2 processors accessible by one unified pool of memory.
Yeah. Josh, I'm curious. I mean, feel free to jump in if you have any thoughts on the memory stuff, or like I brought up this screenshot of the X399 platform. If you think this is like a significant shift for AMD to be able to offer like high-end motherboards and solutions that they weren't able to really do before.
Well, I think the fascinating thing, and probably the strongest part of this entire launch, are going to be the prices that you get and the amount of threads that you're going to have to, you're going to be able to, essentially buy and leverage. Because, say, for instance, something that I have actually built. In the past, we've got a bunch of statisticians in our office, and they can't do a lot of heavy-duty R work on their laptops. Right. And so we made these servers that we called the Sonic servers, after Sonic the Hedgehog, because he runs really, really fast and gets rings and stuff. But
I get it.
Yeah.
Nice.
So anyway, we've made those so far with a couple of Intel chips. I think, what is it? Sandy Bridge E, and then the latest one was Ivy Bridge E based. And so these guys remote in, and they have 6 cores and 12 threads to be able to leverage on, and they work great for that kind of stuff. They remote in, they start running their stuff. We put like 64 gigs of memory in there, and if we look at our usage graphs over the past year, they've been just maxed out. So we bought each one of these machines for about $2,000 a piece that I built myself, and we were able to put in production. And now for about the same price, we're getting about 3 to 4 times the actual performance.
Yeah.
Through that, and we're going to get double the memory and all these other fun, great, wonderful things that Threadripper can give us. I mean, the top end for $999, the second for $799 or $759 or $749. Okay, yeah, just it's so many cores, so many threads,
yeah.
And the way they have created the package, and with the the 2 regular die and then the 2 blanks. It's still 180 watt TDP part.
Yep.
And it's of course TDP is not the same as power draw, but they're pretty similar.
Yeah.
We can go into that.
AMD
whole
likes
thing.
to dive into that discussion for sure.
Yeah, and but what you get and what the single thread performance is, because it can boost up to 4 gigahertz. It covers a huge portion of the performance spectrum that a lot of users who are willing to pay that kind of price would need. Again, if you're gaming, get a i7 7700K and be happy with that for, I don't know, for how long that's going to be.
Sure.
Or an 1800X, or even better yet, save your money and get a 1600X Ryzen. That's probably one of the best overall performing chips for the cost. But if you can really leverage those threads, that's just an insane amount of money that you're saving per thread as compared to the other options out on the marketplace.
So I would encourage people to go to the review, look up, like, we have discussions on the platform, discussions on temperature monitoring, discussions on power consumption, which we'll talk about here. But I wanted to show these benchmarks real quick that we did. In other words, to prove that we did the UMA versus NUMA performance comparisons.
Oh, believe me, we did it.
Ken was running all these numbers, and you can see some of these changes, right? So, if we skip past some of these synthetics and look at, like, actually Geekbench is an interesting one, right?
Yeah.
Because single-threaded results show that NUMA local is about 4% faster, but on multi-threaded, UMA distributed is about 9% faster. And that's kind of the mindset you should be in when thinking about why these two modes exist. But so, look at example at the Blender benchmarking of Gooseberry, 7% faster in UMA. X264 encode, 14 and 7% faster based on the pass. Handbrake, 14% faster.
40%
That's a lot.
Isn't something to sneeze at.
No, that's what I'm saying, and that's and it's these advantages, the 14s, the 7s. There's an 8 here that kind of overrides some of the advantages you see in the gaming, right? So really, Civilization 6 is a unique one. It's 8%, but Ashes of Singularity Escalation is actually 8% the other way. That's because it's this weirdly super highly threaded game engine.
I mean, Civ is usually pretty known for using a lot of CPU.
It is, but it's more, I think it's more thread based as well. And then, you've got Ghost Recon Wildlands, which is 4% faster in UMA, but Rise of the Tomb Raider 7% faster in NUMA, right? So it kind of goes back and forth. So these, and if you're only gaming on it, you might keep it in gaming mode. Like if you're only going to game for the next week, you're not doing any work or on vacation, you put it in game mode and you're going to get a little bit better performance. But in general, the advantages of UMA outweigh the advantages of NUMA in my mind. Yeah, across the board. Yeah. And if you're somebody who's buying $1,000 part, hopefully you follow the same mindset. You're not just buying it for gaming. If you're buying it for gaming first, you're spending too much money.
I think if I spent, I don't know, let's say $2,000 on this platform, because you have an expensive motherboard, cooler, CPU, all of that stuff, plus $2,000 plus a graphics card, we'll say. I would constantly be concerned that I'm not booted in the right mode to get the optimal performance out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd be paranoid, like, well, I mean, what if I switch it over? Would it be, a little faster? Because I think the type of person buying $1,000 processor is the type of person who would love to get an extra 5 or 10% out. They're the sort of tweaker for this target of Threadripper. Be like, oh, yeah, let's see if we can get a little more out of it. Let's overclock a little bit. Let's see if we can get a little more out of it. I think I would be constantly paranoid that I don't have it in the right mode to get optimal performance.
May I posit a theory, please?
You may.
Probably.
Okay. I think that there are essentially two type of people who will buy this.
Okay. Please explain.
You're not going to say anything? Okay. The first is the person who just thinks that they want the best, and they don't actually do a whole lot of reading and understand the metrics. Mm-hmm. They just buy the product. They open up their task manager. They change the display so instead of just the one graph, they can see all 32 graphs. And they play games and they say, that's really smooth and awesome. And they don't worry about that stuff.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because they can see how many cores that they're running. And then you've got the other kind who actually knows what they're doing, who reads, who does pay attention to those things, who will open up the little overclock thing to make sure that they're in the correct memory mode for what kind of work that they're doing. And so this isn't really kind of a win-lose solution situation for AMD because of just the pricing and the people they're appealing to. It's kind of win-win because those who are not as technically that their technical acumen is lacking are still going to see kind of the big picture. Is look at how many cores that I have and how much memory I can stick in this, and it runs so smooth for me.
Yep.
Look at all those PCIe lanes. I can shove them full of video cards that I may or may not know there's SLI or Crossfire enabled.
What you shove them into is totally up to everybody individually. I'm not we're not here to judge you for where you shove your threads.
And nobody should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, you've got the other people who will actually know how to leverage that stuff.
Yep.
And then the people who don't know stuff and kind of care about their money, they're going to buy something cheaper.
Yeah.
Gaming performance wise, we tested at 1080p, we tested at 25x14 and 4K. So at 1080p, this processor has the same kind of fundamental performance disadvantage that
the 1800X does.
The Ryzen 7 had, in that it's just a little bit slower than Intel in those tests. Now, during the Ryzen 7, Ryzen 5 launches, I argue that 1080p performance was still pretty important. I do not agree with that sentiment when we're talking about a $1,000 CPU.
You just shouldn't.
The person who's buying a $1,000 CPU and has a $1,000 combination of stuff.
Even if you try to make the argument that someone who buys Threadripper might be productivity based, might be doing rendering and stuff, those are people more likely to have high resolution monitors, I think, because if you're doing Premiere, if you're doing Blender, you don't want to be using a 1080p display.
Right.
You just don't.
There's still a performance gap at 1440p, and then at 4K it kind of levels out as you expect. We also tested game mode, which is a shortcut profile to enable both legacy compatibility mode and NUMA memory mode. It does both.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you see a couple of games that get a little bit of a performance boost, but otherwise it's pretty close. Real quickly, legacy compatibility mode disables half of the cores on each die to basically, there are some games like Far Cry Primal, for one, which is why there's no score for this in non-game mode, that once it sees more than 20 threads, it just doesn't start. It just crashes. So it's a good fix for that. We did a mega tasking test, read that detail there, where we did gaming plus rendering at the same time. And the net was the AMD system lost more performance in the Intel system, but at the expense of 10 extra minutes of rendering. The Intel system took 10 more minutes to render over its original
something
result.
that doesn't necessarily come across in this chart is that in UMA mode, the Threadripper system trying to do this was completely unusable. You would never run it in this mode.
It was stuttery. The game was bad. The system was non-responsive.
The game was stuttering for 5 seconds at a time. It's just something you would never do.
So I'm going to skip to our kind of encoding tests as we look at them. So single-threaded performance Audacity, not good. But when you look at Handbrake, when you look at X264, when you look at Cinebench, not single-threaded, multi-threaded, Pavre, Blender, these are the workloads that are built, that Threadripper is really targeting and built for. Highly multi-threaded, highly scalable. In Cinebench, multi-threaded, it's like 37%.
Just take that in. Look at that graph. That's amazing.
Yeah.
If you need to render by this processor.
The 12-core part is still, what do I have? It's 12-core part is 15% faster as well, right? So, I mean, and it's $200 less than Core i9 7900X. So it's a significant performance delta there in terms of that performance. Now, we talked about gaming, talked about where it's useful. It is worth noting power consumption is high. It's 180 watt TDP. It's using more power than the Core.
Idle was high.
Yeah. It's like 40 watts higher than the Skylake X part.
I wonder if they're able to. Are they able to totally power down one die?
I don't.
In some of these situations,
I would say no, based on either the maturity of the firmware or these numbers, right? I don't think.
Yeah, the numbers look like that they're both kind of sitting at a lower power state, but they're not. Correct. One's not turned off. Like potentially it could.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe they should ask ARM.
If you turn off a whole die, you're missing PCIe lanes, you're missing memory controllers.
Oh yeah.
So there's some complexity there. Now, overclocking, real quick, we were able to get up to 4 gigahertz at like 1.39 volts, so pretty high voltage.
All threads.
All 4 gigahertz, all cores loaded.
Because it can boost to 4 out of the box, right?
For single thread.
Okay, yeah.
The result is a 12 to 13% improvement in performance over stock, which is pretty nice. But is worth noting that it comes at the cost of about 52% more power. If you look at this graph, like full system power was 268 at stock, 410 when overclocked.
You know how they talk about the nice point of the hockey stick curve? We're way past that with this scaling.
Yeah, so there's a reason they set this with a 360 millimeter cooler.
Yeah,
sure.
I didn't know they made 360 millimeter all at once until we got this.
You can see based on HW info, it says the processor was using 285 watts. On its own.
That's a lot of watts.
We're almost to Vega.
Well, look how much, stinking look at how much area the top of that CPU has that you can put cooling on. It's kind of impressive.
Yeah.
That you have the potential to put cooling on, not right now.
Right.
Well, that's true.
All right, as we round up our discussion of this review, $999 for the 1950X, $799 for the 1920X. The motherboard we use is $550, but there are significantly less expensive options out there. I actually,
very nice motherboard, though, by the way.
It's worth noting that we never had a stability issue. We never had like a BIOS memory concern. We didn't use the memory that AMD sent. We used Corsair memory that they had sent us.
Yeah, that we used for all our CPU testing.
The overall experience was way, way better with Threadripper than it was with Ryzen 7.
And so the 7900X, the X299 boards at launch, they're a little better now. At launch, they're real rough.
Yeah. So AMD deserves credit for that. I come away from Threadripper maybe not as blown away as I had thought I might have been at one point, because the single-threaded performance issues are still there. And in some of the, one of the workloads we test with Blender was only 11% faster than the Intel 7900X. And you keep that in mind, so it's still 11% faster for the same price. So that's AMD still wins there, but not by the 37% that we saw in Cinebench. And it's also worth noting for those people, Josh, that want whatever they can buy, there's going to be higher priced but higher core count Intel processors soon, right? This is a 10-core Intel processor we're going against. There's 12, 14, 16, and 18 still yet to come.
Which we will talk about a little later in the podcast, as you can see, right. Oh, you screwed it up on me.
Of the wallet there. So, yeah. So that's Threadripper. We're going to be talking about this a lot more in the coming weeks. And obviously you need to go to PCPer.com and view the full review. Let's get back to the rest of the show. All right, and we're back. Thank you, Ryan and Ken and Josh, for that riveting discussion on Threadripper.
Man, they're good.
Those guys really know.
Really on top of it.
Yeah, it's a very insightful discussion. Everybody's going to really enjoy that.
Around.
They're going to really like that. So I can't tell you about on the live stream what the reviews are like, but I can tell you how to install the processor.
It's not exactly the most straightforward thing.
It is not. It is not.
I've done it a couple times this week.
The processor installation method for Threadripper is very different than anything we've seen in consumer CPUs before. It uses a sled. It uses 2 retention brackets. It comes, the retail box for Threadripper comes with a
lock, which may not be broken by the time you get to it.
Comes with a torque wrench. Yeah. It's super neat packaging. They spent a lot of time on it. They did a really good job. I don't want to belabor this because this has basically been out for a week. So most of the people who are listening to this podcast or watching it have seen how this works. But other than weighing 1/3 of a pound, other than being about the size of the pancakes that I feed my daughter in the morning, it's an impressive piece of hardware. They do a very good job of presentation with it. With the the box includes the adapter for the Asetek style coolers.
Teeth coolers.
Yeah, Sebastian, what's your opinion on the teeth style cooler? Do you like that retention bracket more or less than some of the other designs? I kind of don't enjoy it.
I'd say less. I'm with you on that one. Although it is convenient that it's just a simple twist to pull it off and switch between AMD and Intel. I give them that.
You have to loosen up those bolts first, the screws, right? And then, but the idea is you don't have to take the whole bracket off.
I think the
right,
bolt,
you sort of lift it slightly, twist, and pull it straight off.
Yeah.
The bolts have to be so loose for there actually to be any give to get it underneath the teeth that you're essentially taking it off, in my experience. So I usually just do that. I usually align
with
it.
The teeth,
and then,
you can adjust where those hoses come out of really easily.
That's true. You have unlimited positions or many positions that they can come out of. That's true.
That's helpful.
So you can see in the video here that like you actually keep the processor in this plastic sled and then you slide it in. Not the first time, of course.
Of course, it took you several times to actually insert it correctly.
It's like a USB port, honestly.
I mean, funny, Josh, but like it is actually very difficult to align it. Is it having done it a couple of times? Like,
well, I mean, your first time,
yeah, exactly.
You learn
the first time we tried to stick it in
didn't
there.
drop the CPU and as soon as you touched it. So
the first time we tried to stick it in there, you just get it right lined up in the hole. It's not
if you don't hear a click, something's wrong.
Paste all over his hands, and it was just really messy.
Yeah. And if it's the father's pistol hammer going back, that's the wrong click, and we're talking about the wrong thing.
Yeah, indeed. We also do an unboxing if you care about that, like the reviewer's kit, because they did a fantastic job presenting the reviewer's kit. Like they sent it in one of these bulletproof looking cases, like what's the
knockoff Pelican case.
Knockoff Pelican case. They gave us a custom PC Perspective etched Ryzen dummy part. The lights come up behind the plastic housing on the packaging. They did a really good job with this. But now that we've already talked about the review, it feels a little empty to be talking about just simple unboxing of these parts. But I'm excited about it. I was just gonna ask like Josh and Sebastian what they think about Threadripper, but I guess I can't ask them that.
But I can tell you about the package.
Yes,
they don't have opinions because
it's when you get it and you open it and you do that, it's an event. It's not just opening up a little box and you got a little plastic clamshell, you take some out. No, this is opening. It's like a flower opening up to you just personally.
I was trying to think of a comparison, and I can't really.
I actually
like a lot of really expensive luxury goods don't come in ornate boxes.
Well, I mean, Intel's $1,000 7900X comes in just a box. Yeah. Like it's got a design on it. It says the name of the part and everything, but it's just a box. Mm-hmm. The Threadripper is a presentation. It is It is something like that. And whether or not you care about that, it's going to determine, is going to be based on you. But I think for a lot of consumers that are going to be striving to get into that $800 and $1,000 processor point, if you're spending much more than you're used to on a system, the impact of something like that is actually super nice to have, right? It feels weighty. It feels not just because it's actually heavy, but it feels like substantial, like you're doing something of merit when you install it.
But on the same side, if you're Josh building a machine to run R simulations, you don't care.
Yeah, True. I do. Are you kidding me?
Oh.
Do you realize why I got into hardware reviewing?
I
like opening this stuff up and testing it.
I meant the royal Josh, not that Josh in particular.
Oh, well, gosh.
If you're an IT guy.
If you have to install 20 of these over the course of...
then it gets annoying.
What was that? All right. Okay. I'm glad I wasn't having a epileptic seizure or something. So that's our Threadripper coverage. Check out the review at PCPer.com. It's live now. Not live now, but like it's the 10th, guys. It's live on the 10th. Let's get into a review. And hey, we haven't had Sebastian on in a while. We talk about his crap all the time. So let's talk about his reviews with Sebastian. Sebastian, tell me about the BitFenix Shogun tempered glass enclosure. These are all the rage these days.
Yes, having tempered glass has become actually pretty affordable, so you're finding it on more and more cases. Although I will say that the side panels on this case are the thickest glass I've seen so far, so they took it to the next level.
Is that THICC or what?
Yeah, thick.
Okay, that's good. Yeah,
thick.
Just making sure.
As you can see from this first photo, it has
it's a beautiful photo.
Yeah, thank you. You can see my living room lamp reflected in it. I seriously considered the top left-hand corner.
Oh
of the glass
yes, I see it there now. Yeah,
I seriously considered photoshopping that out. I'm like, you know what? I can't do this. So, it's kind of interesting because at the bottom there you have a front-facing double SSD mount with the same RGB lighting as the rest of the case. So, kind of an odd thing, but you can display your SSDs.
I mean, so SSDs don't generally have like a fantastic looking design, but they're expensive investments for your PC, so you might want to show them off. I can see that. As opposed to having them in the back where the rat's nest of cables is.
Right. And I found a silver one, so it reflected the light nicely. I thought it was an interesting effect, but not necessary. And you can take the bracket out as well if you don't want it there. This is a really big case, too. I mentioned in the review. It's a mid-tower, but it is the size of some full towers.
And what the hell's the difference?
Expansion slots, total room inside the case.
Okay.
So, like, inside the case itself, once you get everything, like, once you're building, it kind of looks like every other open internal layout mid-tower.
Right.
Including some other BitFenix cases. The main difference is the external appearance of this. You have a top and bottom aluminum sculpted panel.
Mm-hmm.
And underneath that single piece of aluminum, you have like a metal mesh. It's kind of like what you'd expect to see on like an outdoor speaker is how I described it.
Okay.
That kind of sturdy metal mesh, which acts as to increase airflow. So kind of interesting idea where you have that scoop that sort of intakes air and expels it. And there's the close-up of the very thick side panel there. The rear side panel is painted black on the inside, so it's not actually clear. So
but it's still glass.
Reflects light. Yeah, it reflects light and kind of like a mirror on the back, so you don't see any cable mess at all.
Do you
but
like
you
that?
still have the effect of glass on both sides.
Do you like that?
Which I don't know. It's a little odd. I understand the aesthetic choice for symmetry, but it makes it a lot heavier, especially considering how thick the glass is, and it makes the case cost more because you're paying for two of these really thick glass panels. So if they were to change anything about the case, I would say just put a metal panel on the back.
Gotcha.
How resilient is that paint on that other panel?
It seems to be very thick. It's some sort of
It's like a laminate instead of a paint.
I didn't do a analysis on it on a chemical level.
Come on, man.
Didn't do the scratch test.
I called it covered in black paint.
That's fair.
So that's as far as I went. I'm sorry.
Anything else stand out? So we can see the SSD mounts there.
I will just briefly say there's a couple of interesting things about the inside. One, you can see in these pictures, if you're watching the stream, there are these little kind of soft tray looking things on the right hand side below the hard drive cages.
Here?
And those are removable, and each one of them is designed to support a longer graphics card. So they're padded and they just hold the graphics card up. So when I got done installing my system, I just propped the card up with one of these things, tightened it down. They have a slot they can move up and down, and then I had absolutely no sag. So that's a nice feature. And then the other thing is this case supports EATX. You have to take out the hard drive cages, and you can swap in an additional motherboard tray element and expand the case in that direction. So there's some modularity to the case design as well.
Interesting. All right. What's it cost?
I believe when I wrote this up, it was selling for $149 on Amazon.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
So it's definitely in that premium category over $100. You're getting the very thick tempered glass side panels. It has Asus Aura integration. So if you have one of those motherboards, it has infinite colors, 16 million colors.
I didn't notice. Does it have a spot for my Blu-ray player?
You know what? That's an interesting omission. You know how most cases these days don't really have those 5 1/4 inch bays. It has the cutout for the 5 1/4 inch bay.
It doesn't have,
but it doesn't have
nothing is behind it.
I hate optical drives, and that's BS.
You can mod it. I mean,
why?
It's there.
Why?
I don't know why it's there. There's not even space for a fan controller. So, question
it's just
mark.
an aesthetic decision. It just happens to be 5 1/4 inches.
Yes, it breaks up the monotony of what would otherwise be a solid front panel in a aesthetically pleasing way, reminiscent of the 5 1/4 inch drive bays of yesteryear.
It's skeuomorphic.
It's for people who like want to remember the days of optical drives, but are smart enough to realize that they're awful. Right?
I wonder if anybody buys this and starts like pressing on it and trying to find like the catch to release.
I might at that point. Like,
yeah, fair enough.
I wouldn't look at the specs page to see if it has a 5 1/4 inch bay if it had that cut out in the front.
I mean, if I were building it, you would know immediately.
Yeah.
So there is that. All right, that's cool. We won't have any of the tempered glass cases in here, actually, do we?
Yeah, we do.
What do we have?
I don't remember.
I think there's one or two back there.
I think the one Alex is using is tempered glass for the editing machine on the other side. Maybe.
What a waste.
I think that's Lexan.
Yeah.
Right.
Brian, I can hook you up if you need one.
Do you have cases? Sebastian?
I have a couple.
I don't see any in the background where you're at, though, so it feels a little odd, right? Usually
I'm in a undisclosed location currently.
I see. A board
away from my cases.
Yeah. A couple of other reviews real quick to touch on. Maury posted a review of the MSI X299 Gaming M7 ACK. ACK.
Did the SIN come before this motherboard, or?
I don't know. It's a pretty interesting design. I like kind of the silver, gray, red, and this kind of like, I don't know, I keep calling it like the claw or something like that, but I don't know what they call it actually. Yeah, it does. It does. Yes. A lot of capabilities in here. You got killer Wi-Fi, killer networking, a lightning port.
What's a lightning port?
Well, what does it say actually? What is that? Lightning USB 3.1 Gen 2.
Okay, so a USB 3.1 Gen 2.
But they don't mean Thunderbolt. No. Otherwise, they would say Thunderbolt, I assume.
So when you plug it in, does a guy in a wizard costume come by and say, lightning bolt? I mean,
I hope so. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, otherwise, what are we even doing here, right?
Exactly.
Looks like a pretty interesting board. See, like stylized photos just add a whole lot to that, don't they?
That's why you need the LEDs.
Yeah, that's true. Thank God for RGB, right?
We need the boards rigged up like they do at trade shows, where they just have power connected and they're running the LEDs without a CPU or anything connected.
I mean, we can easily do that. Yeah. We can do that. So this is X299, so it's built for Skylake X, so your 7900X or your 7820 or 7740 or whatever platforms you happen to use with that. It looks like they're using, so that claw actually covers the two M.2 slots.
Not a bad idea.
Of two different lengths, and you can see they've got the heatsink on them. We'll have to check with Allyn later and see if those heatsinks, if they're hitting the NAND, that's bad. If they're hitting the controller, that's good.
Looks like there's even a lead for a temp sensor on that heatsink. Or is that an RGB?
Oh, come on, son. It's got to be RGB.
I'm sorry.
Would you use leads for useful stuff like that?
That's a nice
Is that
photo
on a hinge?
right there.
Oh, it's just on a hinge. Oh, okay. That's kind of cool.
That's a good photo. We got the socket there exposed. That's some nice framing.
Good job, Maury.
I mean, we could talk about white balance, but let's not.
Well, he doesn't have his furniture glaring into it, so.
Oh, yeah, there's no lamps in that picture. No lamps in that picture. Maury's article goes over the UEFI, the BIOS. It goes over the BIOS.
It's not a BIOS.
Whatever, it will forever be. Overclocking.
It's a BIOS, son.
Yeah. Pricing. So this is a $399 motherboard.
That's a bit steep.
Yeah, it is.
But Ken, look at the armor. Look at those armored PCIe slots. You're not damaging those.
Plus, they're probably illuminated. They're definitely illuminated. But there is no RGB LED configuration via the UEFI, and no PCIe by 1 port to the right of the primary. Wait, what does that say? To right of primary PCIe slot. To right? To the right.
I don't know which perspective he's talking about.
What?
Yes.
Is he talking about above it? He's got to be talking about above it.
Oh.
Right?
But there isn't room.
You could make room if you just push those DIMM slots out of the way.
All right, good point.
Yeah, I mean, come on, guys. It's just simple motherboard design. So check that out. That's the MSI X299 Gaming M7 ACK. ACK, we've got that up there for you. And then also real quick, Lee posted a review of the Corsair HX series 850 watt platinum power supply from Corsair. This is an updated HX series. They have updated the 750, 850, the 1000, and the 1200 watt power supply. I don't know how difficult these are to find with all the mining crap that was going on. But they have 50C ratings, 80 plus platinum efficiency. So these are going to be the most efficient. Is there anything above platinum? I don't think so right now. Titanium's above that. Okay. 10-year warranties, which is impressive to see. And the 850 model starts at $159, and then the 850i with Corsair link is $199. That's that's kind of a steep add-on for a technology that probably not a whole lot of people are really utilizing right now. But
is it? You said platinum. Is it Ethereum rated? I believe that's the higher rating.
Oh, you know what? No, adamantium is also not part of the standard yet, so there is that. What are the power supplies we've been using recently? They were RM 1000. So these are a little bit more updated than that. Lee, just go read the review. It's nice to see reviews of power supplies that are in more reasonable expectation, like wattage ranges, as opposed to 1000 plus. Although the RX Vega liquid cool does have a recommended power supply spec of 1000 watts, according to the Sapphire site.
Overclocked RX Vega and an overclocked Threadripper. You're
near 1000 watts. That's true.
I just break embargo.
No.
It's on Sapphire's website.
Oh, okay, fair play.
Yeah. So check out the review. It is a fully modular case. You can switch between single and multiple 12-volt rails on it.
That's neat.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever need to, but
yeah, I mean, sure. Yeah. Oops. Skill there. It did get a gold award as well, with the only weakness being no dedicated PCIe connectors on a single cable. So looks like they're all split in that regard. Oh, I see. Yeah. They're all the dual connector style, I guess, which saves space on the back of the power supply, but does make it a little bit more pain as you're building your machine. So there you go. That's the Corsair HX power supply. All right, let's get into some news items that occurred. AMD, obviously had the big news of the day with the Threadripper release and the reviews and all that. 16-core processors, flagship performance, highest core count for a consumer part. Intel, kind of knowing this was coming, decided this week to release the rest of the specifications for their Core i9 series of parts. They'd already told us what the parts were going to be, like the names and the prices, but they hadn't told us clock speeds, and I'm guessing they hadn't actually determined clock speeds yet. So now we know the clock speeds, right? So we didn't know anything above the 10 core. Now we know all the way up to 18 cores. They're going to have Turbo Boost Max 3 speeds of 4.4 gigahertz, meaning that 1 or 2 cores, if that's all you're really loading down the system at any given time, will be able to hit clock speeds as high as 4.4 gigahertz. That's obviously higher than the Threadripper parts that were 4 gigahertz, or that are 4 gigahertz rather. Now, if you look at the base clock, the 18 core is down to 2.6 and the 16 core is down to 2.8 gigahertz. Those are actually pretty low. And depending on how aggressive Intel can get with power consumption and TDPs and all that type of stuff, if you look across at the Threadripper 1950X and 1920X, and even, the 1900X doesn't really count in this regard, but like those have 400 or 500, or no, actually they have 800 megahertz improvements over the 18 core Intel part. and 6 to 800 megahertz faster over the 16 core part. So it does create like this really interesting topic of discussion until we get parts in our hand about how that scaling will actually work in terms of benchmarks, software, actual performance metrics that we can look at. Get memory here. That's all quad channel PCIe lanes. So nothing over 44 lanes for the consumer parts. The TDPs do jump from 140 to 165 as we get higher. But as we talked about earlier with the Threadripper parts, they're using a lot of power. So not a super big concern there. But pricing, obviously, the bottleneck for Intel at this point, right? So their 12-core processor is going to be $1199. 14 cores for $1399, 16 cores for $1699, and 18 cores for $1999. So
that is both a lot of cores and a lot of money at the same time.
It is a lot of dollars per cores. Yeah, there is that. That's true. So I don't know. Any thoughts on what this will mean now that we know the clock speeds? They did announce also the availability. So the 12-core will launch on August 28th. While the 14, 16, and 18 core parts will launch on September 25th. So we have
sooner than we thought.
Yeah, I was thinking more
November,
late
December.
October timeframe at the earliest. So they either bumped it up because of Threadripper or just because. So any thoughts on these?
Competition's a wonderful thing.
It is. I wish they would suddenly lower prices as well, but I did think it was odd that when they first launched Skylake X, they announced pricing for the whole family across the board already, right? And that was back in May, or Computex timeframe, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. So very end of May, as opposed to waiting and seeing what AMD was going to do. They didn't do that, so I don't know if they regret that decision or not. But
they got moles at AMD.
Yeah, I mean, probably
they know what they're doing before them.
Everybody knows what everybody's doing.
Yeah.
Sebastian, you ready for a $2,000 Skylake X part?
Absolutely, as long as you're providing it.
Okay, well, moving on.
It does seem a little high considering what else is out there.
I'm actually just curious. Yeah, I mean, if I look at, I don't know what that app was. What is the cost per core, right? So the 18 core is $111 per core, while the 12 core is $100 per core, right? So it's not that far off.
Should be getting cheaper as you add cores,
and then the 1400 for the 14 core. Yeah. So once you get to the 16 core, you're paying a little bit more. So it's not as different as I thought it was going to be, I guess. Whereas obviously, if you just look at cost per core, AMD has the advantage, but IPC, clock speeds, there's a whole lot of other stuff that goes into that decision. So I'm very curious to see what this will turn into at the late summer, early fall.
Have we hit 10 cents per core yet?
No, quite far from that, apparently. I mean, maybe if we get down to some of the ARM parts, we can maybe have that discussion. Maybe stuff that goes into a calculator or something.
Those M0s.
Yeah, maybe. Could ask our buddies at ARM if we could just get a license for one and for 10 cents. Never actually build it, but all right. So that's the upcoming Skylake X Core i9 updates. And then we also had, I thought we were going to talk about only rumors about this, but then Intel made an announcement of a pending announcement, which is all the rage now. Sebastian, what are they telling us here for the Eclipse Day?
That the 8th generation is coming. They are announcing the announcement is upcoming. That you don't have to be left in the dark, no pun intended, during the eclipse. It's a Facebook live stream, so you can view it from Facebook on their Intel Facebook page. Ugh. And I reprinted their 8-point bullet list of the things they're going to be discussing on the stream. But as we just went over, they've already released details about clock speeds, core counts, etc.
But the 8th gen is different. 8th gen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So 8th gen will be.
Pardon me.
Their this is gonna be their next mobile.
This is Coffee Lake. We're talking about Coffee Lake now.
I don't
We're talking about 8th gen.
Yeah, I don't want to say that yet.
There are weird conflicting roadmap leaks.
Yeah,
there's
there's
that stuff.
There are rumors that it's Coffee Lake. It's rumors that it's another version of Cabby Lake.
On the mobile side, and then desktop.
It's definitely, I mean, if you look at this picture, it's a laptop. So.
What? No.
Yeah. Sorry to tell you guys, it's a laptop right here. You see the keyboard and then the laptop.
I thought it was Mothman.
It kind of does look like that. I was trying to figure out what else they were going for, and I can't figure it out.
Kind of like Dead Mouse.
I'm very confused because I pulled up the wrong article that I wrote.
Oh, okay.
Where I was covering rumors about something called Coffee Lake.
You got to do this in order, man. We're in order.
And yes, I hit the wrong link. I apologize. I was confused because the author was the same, and yet he has no idea what he's talking about.
What author would that be?
Josh Walrath.
Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
There must be an error in the system. I'll have to let the devs know.
Yeah, you should get on that. Yeah. All right. So the 8th gen announcement is basically a mobile part. What else do they talk about? They talk about Don't Get Left in the Dark, 8th gen for VR creator, something.
The most important part is that it will be over before the eclipse starts. I was a little confused about this when I saw this announcement. Like, wait a minute. Everybody's been talking about this. This national news. There's going to be this nationwide eclipse, and you're going to hold your live stream. I'm not going to be, guys. I'm at my computer. You enjoy the eclipse. I'm watching it.
They're going to point a camera at the sun so you get the same effect.
True.
They're streaming on Facebook Live.
They're in the totality ring, so they're going to do us all a favor and stream it over Facebook.
That's true. They could do that.
Isn't that amazing? I'm nearly in the totality ring.
Vision.
In fact, 2 hours north. I'm there, taking the kids.
Yeah,
like
we're like 3
north.
hours to get to Bowling Green. Yeah, here. I mean, you're not that special. That's what I'm saying.
I am special.
Oh, okay. I mean, what?
Okay.
I mean, let's not dive into it anymore.
Gosh, you're special to me.
So yeah, I've actually had to decline 2 different like product briefings that were occurring during the eclipse. It's like, no, guys, at 1 p.m. Eastern, no, I don't think I'm gonna take that phone call. How about 10 a.m. or 4 p.m. It lasts for an hour and a half from beginning to end. So
I think totality is like 1:45, maybe.
I mean, it depends on where you're at.
I think you're looking at Central Time, which is where you're going to drive to.
Yep.
Yeah. So 2 something here. So there you go. If you want to, like August 21st, we're going to know about the 8th generation for mobile. And the only thing they mention is purchase in the holiday season, end quote, even before.
That's a bad phrasing on that.
Yeah.
To purchase in the holiday season and even before.
Then just say before, holiday season.
Before.
Yeah.
And what holiday? I mean, it could be.
Well, maybe
that's true.
St. Patrick's
Maybe they've got an exclusive, just like AMD and Threadripper. Most everybody can get it in the holiday season, but if you want it before, you got to get with Dell and Alienware.
Well, I imagine it's not Dell and Alienware for this one, but
Alienware 13.
Let's look at that second story, Sebastian, that this other guy wrote.
This is the one I wrote.
The other one was not. Okay,
Yeah,
so tell me about
Josh
this.
screwed
What are the
Sorry,
Coffee
Josh.
Lake rumors? And this might be confusing because if the rumors are right, they're calling this 8th generation, which is a different architecture, whereas 8th generation on the mobile side might not be. I don't know.
Maybe it could just be a rebranding on the mobile side. We don't really know. We don't know anything about it. We know they're going to be doing an announcement live.
All right.
On the 21st.
So what's this one?
So these, and you can't trust every single rumor, of course. There have been several of these swirling around. I reproduced a chart in this post that was published by WCCF Tech, and there's a slight disparity between what's in the chart and what they actually published in the article as far as clock speeds, for example, with the i7. But essentially, the big news from this was not that there will be a new flagship i7 desktop part, because of course there will be. And it'll be an 8700K, we assume, if there's been a 77 and a 67 and so on. But the change is core counts across the board, it looks like. So with the Core i7 part, it will, the rumor is that it will be moving to 6 cores, 12 threads instead of 4 cores, 8 threads. You lose a little bit of base clock speed. The boost clocks remain high.
4.7 on the 8700K.
It says 4.7 in the article. It says that it maxes out at 4.3. I don't know which one is
That's a
accurate.
big difference.
Well, so on the table, if it's true, boost clock max would be maximum for single threaded, and then 4.3 is boost clock 6-core, which would be how high it could go fully threaded for some unknown amount of time. So 4.7 still, I mean, that's 200 megahertz higher than the 7700K, I think, right?
I don't know.
Yes,
I mean,
the boost clock is 4.5.
I mean, hold on,
that.
it's literally 2 columns over in the table.
It's
so
very
yes,
small from here.
Yeah.
You need a bigger monitor.
Yeah, please.
Mhm.
But the to me, the bigger story was that there will be, or according to this, there will be 6-core, well, without SMT, no hyper-threading, Core i5s, and
Okay.
then all of the i3s mentioned are 4 cores. I don't understand why there would
but
be
they don't have
hyper-threaded
they don't have hyper
4-core
threading though.
8-thread.
It's going to be 4-core, 4 threads.
I can't imagine they would do a 4-core 8-thread i3 when the i5 is single. Although, current i3 like the 6100, it's a hyper-threaded
Yeah, but those are only
part.
2 cores, 4 threads versus, i5's 4 cores, 4 threads. I mean, it's still a significant difference in performance. And yeah, there's no way they're going to be 4 and 8 with an i3.
You don't think so?
Intel they don't go that way.
I mean, what do you mean?
They don't
Especially
play
what do you
that.
mean they don't go that
i5.
way?
6 cores, 6 threads.
Well, I
no.
would wager that the 6 true cores would be faster than 8 threads, right? Than 4.
But it's not going to be that much faster.
Yeah. I mean, I guess.
Look at your base clocks.
Sure. Yeah. Boost clocks, Core i3s don't, at least according to this table, won't have like turbo boost still. Yeah, I'd be interested to see what their decision is. Like, so AMD is putting a lot of pressure on them with the Ryzen 3 being quad core 4 thread and the Ryzen 5 being quad core 8 thread. So it is kind of an interesting place because, in theory, the Core i5 of this revision would be faster if they just did quad core hyper threaded, right? But according to this, they're doing 6 and 6 as opposed to 4 and 8. At the Core i7 line, the interesting thing from AMD's standpoint was that the Ryzen 7 kind of split the difference between Core i7 mainstream and Core i7 HEDT. So the 6-core kind of goes after some of that area as well. So I'll be curious to see what this plans out. Did they talk about timing at all in this story?
I didn't see anything about timing, and I didn't see anything specific. I haven't done a lot of extra research. I didn't see anything specific about rumors about pricing. The only thing that kind of struck me was that TDPs appear to be unchanged, which doesn't surprise me. But it's kind of, I guess, on that side of it, if you're looking at price performance, I think Ryzen will still be ahead even after this.
Yep.
But it's hard to argue with something that would potentially be 6 cores at 65 watts.
Yeah, considering part of our Threadripper discussion centered around like, hey, 7700K at quad core, hyper-threaded, high clock speeds is still really, really, really good for gaming stuff. Like adding more frequency and more cores to that.
It's probably still going to be good.
Probably still going to be really good at it, right? Yeah, in a couple of months if this comes to pass. So interesting to see when this gets released. Is this a early 2018 part? Like, is this a CES launch? Is this before that? I don't know. I'll be curious. So interesting stuff. Good job for whoever was the author of that story. I don't know who it was. And we don't have Jeremy here, so I really have no idea what the story is about now. But somebody built a remote starter for their PC. Did you say you understood what this was about, Ken?
A little bit.
What am I looking at? There's some pieces on this picture. I know what those are.
I see some resistors.
Yeah,
I'm resisting. Hashtag. Resist. That's not funny.
That was a little courtesy laugh.
Go ahead, Ken.
Essentially, over at Tech Report, they wanted a way to remotely turn their home theater PC on because it was behind a wall.
Okay.
So they essentially took one of these ESP8266 Wi-Fi microcontrollers, which are very popular right now. You can get a board with them, with one of them on it, like a dev board, for $5.
Okay.
So you can do simple things over Wi-Fi, and essentially they're just kind of, from what I understand, bridging the onboard header of the motherboard to be able to turn the PC on and off remotely. It's kind of a cool little project. It would be a good intro to working with microcontrollers and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Why don't you just solder a really long cable
and poke it through the wall?
Where's the fun in that? Internet of Things, man.
I don't have an answer for that question.
Or just leave it on in a low power state and wake on LAN or something.
I don't know if I've ever gotten wake on LAN. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if I've ever really gotten it to work. Or it wakes up when it's not
wake on USB and you just have a mouse on your wall with the cable going through it.
This guy wanted to solder.
Click the mouse, baby.
The guy wanted to solder. He had a breadboard. He wanted to do stuff. There you go. End of story. Very neatly done, I will say. Yeah. Good job.
Some people still make things, Josh.
Yeah, this is a really long story for...
They go into the science of how wireless technology works. And
how many pages I got left? Okay.
If you make a cable, it's just one page. You can't get ad impressions for that.
Yeah, I don't think that's the reasoning for it. But hey,
that is not a new case. I'm telling you right now.
No. I still gotta say hooked in.
That looks like one of those cheap tech, Antec. I've had so many of those.
It's got front USB though, dog.
Yeah. Oh, well, and a card reader.
USB 1.1, baby.
Oh, that's good stuff. All right. And what else we have? We have I guess was this new information that AMD was going to sell the Wraith Max CPU cooler separately from
I thought they already were, to be honest. Yeah. But I guess not.
So
no,
I think I got corrected on Twitter that there's the Wraith Spire, and then there's one below that I think is what was shipping with the Ryzen 3s. I think somebody was correcting me on that.
Yes, the Wraith POS.
No, that's not very nice.
No, it means point of sale.
Oh, okay. No, I get it. Yeah. No,
the Wraith Max. Yeah, the Wraith Max is a nice cooler. We've used it for a couple things around the office.
Plus, it's got an RGB ring.
Yeah, I don't think the RGB... Is RGB controllable? Yeah, motherboard software. So I guess only if you have an
AMD platform.
Well, you wouldn't be able to mount it to anything else, but if you have an AM3 platform, it wouldn't work.
Is the standard Wraith software upgradable to a Wraith Max with an in-app purchase? And if not, why not?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. So there are four. There's Wraith Stealth, Wraith Spire, Spire with RGB, and then Wraith Max.
Oh,
okay, so the Stealth is what was shipping. The Wraith Stealth is what ships with the Ryzen 3s in the box. It's still a plenty good part. No complaints there from us. But there is a Spire RGB, and then the Wraith Max.
What are
which it's I think
$60 for this cooler. Yeah, you shouldn't buy that.
I mean, it's okay.
You can buy.
Wait, did Josh? Did you or Sebastian? Did you guys actually test this at some point?
Not this one.
I tested the original Wraith.
Do you know how many Evo
one of the FX
you can buy? 212 Evos.
You could buy
for
at least
$60
two for that.
The
price.
answer is two.
Two.
And you could buy one and an RGB strip,
3 on
and
sale.
there you go.
Josh, how many RGB strips does the 212 Evo have? I'll take your answer offline.
Zero.
Answer is 0.
Break out the soldering iron. There you go.
Yeah. Checkmate.
You know, people actually make things, Ken.
Touche. The Wraith Max is rated at 140 watts. So that would they let the Threadripper is 180, so it wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't mount also.
Well, yeah, sure. If people still make things, Ken, you could probably strap that down if you really needed to in an emergency situation.
You might be able to strap it on, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Zip ties.
Just hold it in place over the CPU if it's that big of an emergency.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to peg the CPU.
Sometimes you can't replace the human touch.
Oh, good God. Is this thing over yet?
Oh, it's close. Look at the left-hand side of the screen. It's close.
For better cooling, you supply more pressure.
It's mostly like bleeding. I don't.
Why?
One last bit of here. LaCie announced a 96 terabyte NAS, 12 bay NAS.
Only 96 terabytes.
Available in 48, 72, 96, and 120 terabyte varieties. So I don't know why Jeremy maxed out the story at 96. All having a dozen 3.5-inch bays for your drives. As you can see in the photo, it's not exactly a small thing. It actually looks like a freestanding rack mount server.
It's not that big.
No, but I mean, if you didn't know the scale of the trays that are coming out, you thought those were U-mount servers. Apparently, Kit Guru did a review of this, measured speed of 2.2 gigabytes per second for RAID 0 and for RAID 5.
Thunderbolt 3.
Yeah. I mean, you got to at that point, right? So it's got to be up there. Cost-wise, 8,300 pounds. So that's like what?
That's very heavy.
Is that like $6? Is that like $12?
I don't know.
So it's like, what is that really? $5,000 or something like that? $4,000, $5,000.
8,300 pounds.
Yeah,
that's
like 16,000.
What?
Did I go the wrong way?
No. The pound is not that much higher than $1 right now. It's like $1.10 a pound. Okay, so you're looking about $9,000.
$10,790 US.
788.
That sounds like a lot. Yeah, I would probably not buy that.
Spoiler alert, we are building a 128 terabyte network storage device for significantly cheaper than that in this office. Stay tuned.
It doesn't look that cool.
We haven't built it yet. How do you know what it looks like?
It's got that blue eye in the upper hand corner that makes it look like it's an AI keeping track of us.
That's worth at least $2,000.
At least. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap up the news part. Let's get into our hardware, software picks of the week. Mine is going to be this guy right here, the ThinkPad X1 Carbon 5th Gen, that actually has a 7th Gen processor in it. So they should maybe think about readjusting that. It's a laptop I've been using for the last couple of weeks after being kind of tired with the results of my Dell XPS 13 that battery died and tried to do a replacement. It just didn't work out. The battery didn't die. It just is significantly lower battery life than it used to have. And so it's nice to go back to one where, like, if I leave the charger here at the office and I'm going to go home for a few hours and come back the next morning, it's fine, right? I don't have to worry about that. And apparently I can lay it flat.
There we are.
So, hey, that's us. Look, you're about ready to bend the thing back. Inception. It's an expensive device. Yes, it says it's starting at $1,101. But
the X1 has always been more expensive than the.
So you can see here these build out starts $1,100, $1,250, and then $1,956 all of a sudden. And the difference is you're getting the i7 processor, and you also you get double the memory, you get 1 terabyte SSD in it.
That's the big one.
It's okay. 57 watt hour battery, so not a huge battery. It's still a very thin device. It's still very light. It's not a touch screen. It's 1080p, which is actually all of those things are what I wanted. I don't want it to be super reflective. I don't want it to have the extra weight of the touchscreen interface. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed going back to a Lenovo keyboard. Like a Lenovo keyboard for typing is still kind of unrivaled in that regard. So if you're in the market to buy, it's worth looking at.
Lenovo Outlet's nice. These machines have been out for a while, so you might be able to find something.
Yeah, that's true. Even when I was looking at the new XPS 13s, we were looking at the Dell outlet for that as well. So something we're keeping in mind. So this is the Core i5 variant, I think, right?
Yes.
So it's even the i7 is still 2-core, 4-thread, 8 gigs, 256 gig SSD, plenty for what my purposes are, except my Dropbox is now a little bit bigger than it needs to be. But 2
Thunderbolt 3 ports, which is nice because you can charge and do stuff at the same time.
Yep, 2 Thunderbolt 3. It's still got 2 full-size USB 3.0, full-size HDMI, and then that weird networking dongle port or whatever it is. So nice. One thing I would like to see on this that like the Surface has, the Surface Pro, is the Windows Hello. I've come to really appreciate that login option on my PC and on that laptop.
I have to imagine that a lot of corporate policy wouldn't allow it, so they just don't even bother.
Really? Facial recognition for security? Because it has a fingerprint sensor, and it works like every third time. So, it's the such is life. All right, so who do we got next on this list?
Who do you think?
Not Jeremy. Must be Josh.
Jeremy.
All right, what do you got, buddy?
Okay, this one came out yesterday. Hellblade. Senua's, what is it? Senua's Dead.
I remember this
Sacrifice.
Demo. Yeah.
I've watched some of the developer blogs on these things, and the amount of technology they put together to make this was really impressive. And it's only $30. It's only 7 to 10 hours worth of play. I don't know about replayability, but it's a small group. It's like 20 or 30 people who worked on this, and they essentially made a AAA title. They implemented a lot of really advanced technology to do this. It looks pretty fantastic. It apparently has a great story. It's just the
demo Ken and I saw was part of the facial capture, like they did. They did.
Yeah,
live
the gal
actor
had the lights around her face and the cameras, and they followed her eyes and the mouth really well, and facial features. It was pretty amazing.
I'm going to buy this just so I can see some of that tech at work.
Interestingly enough, Brian and I listened to the Giant Bombcast, and they started talking about this game this week, and I didn't remember the name of the title versus the game that we saw at GDC 2 years ago. So I was thinking like, oh, this indie game, like I was thinking like, more simplistic graphics, like maybe a 2D game or something like this, and it's this. So now I'm super excited, like a really good looking game, and they were talking about how like the story and the gameplay are pretty cool.
Might have a new AMD video card to test it on. Play with it on.
I think Jacob was talking to me. There's no single video card that can get close to 60 frames per second at 4K with this.
Good.
There you have it.
Good. This is from the makers of Heavenly Sword, Enslaved Odyssey to the West, and Devil May Cry. And DMC, Devil May Cry.
Yeah.
Comes a warrior's brutal journey into myth and madness. Very cool.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it was, it's built on the Unreal Engine. They were, as are most things these days, I guess.
Yeah, I guess what you need to do is you play it in a dark room and you have headphones, because it's got really, really good spatial audio. Like absolutely amazing, apparently.
Wait. Headphones, you say?
Headphones. Unless you got a good 5.1 system with rear surrounds.
Maybe headphones like these?
Ken, what is your pick of the week?
So my pick of the week are these headphones.
Sony MDR 1000X/B.
Yeah. So I was going on a trip back in May, a long plane ride over the Atlantic, and I wanted to get some noise canceling headphones. So it was like the day before. I just wanted them. I decided at last minute. I went into Best Buy and I was like, please, kind sir, point me to your Bose Quiet Comfort Bluetooth headphones. Because I have an iPhone 7 without a headphone jack, whole nother thing, But I figure noise canceling headphones, Bose. Okay, there we go. And the salesman, actually very helpful, went, okay, they're over here. But have you seen the Sonys? I go, no. I've never heard of Sony making noise canceling headphones. And they actually had a demo station set up, so I sat there and tried both the Sony and the Bose for a while, and I ended up getting the Sonys. They do a couple cool things. They have the ability to mix in ambient sound. So if you're wearing the headphones and you hold your hand on the right ear cup, which is touch sensitive, it will instantly cut in audio it hears through the mic. So if you're on a plane, you see the flight attendant coming towards you for a drink order or something like that, you just put your hand over the ear. You look kind of stupid, but
do you go like this? Do you go, Roger, what's that? Come in, please.
You pretty much feel like that the entire time.
Just making sure.
So that's cool.
That makes it better in my book.
And then they also have settings where you can just mix in like 2 different levels of ambient noise all the time. Mm-hmm. So I wear them around the office, and I turn off the noise canceling feature, and since they seal pretty well, I'll turn on ambient noise so I can hear if you're trying to get my attention or something like that. So I have Bluetooth headphones I can walk around the office in, and they sound pretty nice. I think they sound a little better than the Bose stuff, a little more.
Is there a wired option for them, or are they only wireless?
Yeah, they have a 3.5 inch.
Okay.
3.5 millimeter jack as well.
3.5 inch.
Yeah, 3.5 inch jack. Yeah.
That's one of those things that Hugh would probably like. He wants to talk to somebody. It's the side of his.
Hello.
Colonel Shepard. Colonel Shepard.
Roger Bacon.
Yeah. And so they're charged through micro USB. They're very expensive at retail. So when I bought
link to the certified refurb on Amazon.
When I bought them at Best Buy, they were $400. And hey, guess what? I had the plan to just return them after my flight because I wasn't buying a $400 pair of headphones and keeping them. That's too bougie for me. So right now on Amazon New, they're like $328, which is a little better. But you can do what I did and buy the certified refurbished ones, which are $260 on Prime right now. And I think that's about what I paid for them back.
I bought a pair of JVC ones with AAA battery that worked pretty well for $29.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Josh.
I will say I've been impressed with Sony's noise canceling headphones for years, and even their cheap ones, which I looked up, are the ZX110s. The only problem with them is they don't seal really well against the ear, but the noise cancellation and it uses a single AAA battery like Josh's JVCs, works extremely well at blocking out the background hum and a lot of the ambient noise, but you can still hear like the sounds that are not constant. You'll still hear like somebody talking to you or something. Right. Doesn't block that stuff out. But as they go up the line with the Sonys and the cups get bigger, the seal is better, then it's just that much better. But Sony actually a very good brand for noise canceling headphones.
Yeah. I was very surprised to see how they kind of nailed the noise canceling tech when, again, like you think of Bose as being the only game in town for higher end noise canceling stuff.
All right, Sebastian, your pick.
Well, now that I look at it, apparently you can't buy this, so it's not a good pick. Because everywhere I'm looking, it's like out of stock.
Yeah.
It lets me add it to the cart, but it's also out of stock.
It does say temporarily out of stock. Order now, we'll deliver when
temporarily
available.
Out of stock.
Yeah.
But it's the replica of the original USS Enterprise 1701A featured in PC Perspective Podcast 462. There's PCPer Podcast battle damage and some special decal work that was done just for this podcast.
You can now sell that as a screen use prop.
The list of sound quotes include such magical quotes as on screen, magnify. See if I get it right.
Can you hear?
My friends, we've come home. What's the matter, Jim? I miss my old chair.
See, it's got all sorts of sound
talking.
I was gonna say those quotes aren't actually on this page, so there's that. So it's just it's a subset thereof. $60 for that. Do you feel like you get your money's worth?
I do, because I don't want to build a model myself. I've always been terrible at that. And then you look into like the lighting kits for models.
Yeah,
and I love the movie version of the classic Enterprise, the refit, and this one. And the nicest feature about this is if you hold down the bridge button, it just has like an always on lighting mode.
Hey, show them the light on that. Let's see.
So for presentation purposes, let me do it again. It only lasts for a few seconds. I'm not sure why there's not a constant on. There should be. But let me see if I can center this here.
It always made me mad when I watched, the original Star Trek movie that had the best warp core effect with the watery kind of plasma glow. And then you had Star Trek The Next Generation where it's just neon rods. I hated that. It was so cheesy.
They just stretched it. They did that stretch effect. I mean, going to warp.
I don't know what's going on.
No, I'm talking the warp core itself. When it's... Anyway.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I liked it when it glowed in Next Generation.
They're just
neon. It was a good effect.
Strips.
It glows really bright, and then the ship takes off.
Yeah, but plasma is like it's water, man. Well, it's not. It's plasma because it's plasma. It's not neon strips.
Josh,
speak to the hand.
It's suspension of disbelief. Just roll with it.
Josh, let me consult my Star Trek The Next Generation technical manual, and I'll get back to you on the exact rationale behind the change.
Yeah.
I did have one more pick. It came from Allyn. It came in late. His recommendation was any kind of fire extinguisher that you might have, maybe one that's portable. Probably can't take fire extinguishers on planes with you necessarily, but it would have been useful at the Flash Memory Summit where, or you can get the fire extinguishing aerosol spray pack of 2. There you go. So that's something you might
just ship it ahead.
Right. Apparently, what was it? The booth that wasn't Seagate. It was Inno something. Innodisc.
Yeah.
Booth caught fire overnight, and so they never opened the exhibit hall at Flash Memory. So can't wait to see some of the fallout from that. That'll be interesting.
So, just burning PCBs. That's fine, right?
Yeah, apparently there was no more fire, but there was a lot of toxicity concerns of how lead-free exactly are your products. So there you go. All right. So that's going to be it for the episode today, guys. PCPer.com/podcast. Go there, find our links to YouTube videos, RSS files, show notes with links to all the stories we talked about, including the Threadripper story that will be up now, by the time you're listening to this,
Sure,
except
why
for the
not?
live people, the many hundreds of you that are on there now. Sorry about that. And otherwise, we will come back and we'll see you next week for another riveting episode with more AMD hardware to talk about. So we'll see you next time, guys. Bye. If you enjoyed this content, consider supporting in-depth technical content by contributing at patreon.com/PCPer.